Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about a topic that is extremely disturbing. And of course, in the recent past, we've seen more instances of child abuse particularly. It's of course something that's condemnable on all levels. We'll be talking about, of course, the way that we've seen an increase, why has there been an increase at all, and of course the laws that are there to deal with this issue. Where are the problems as far as the implementation is concerned? Is there a dearth of laws that perhaps we need more laws, we need more stringent laws, or we need to work on implementation? Side by side, of course, what the society as a whole can do as far as awareness is concerned, as far as our issues overall, of course, as far as religion is concerned, with regard to what the religion says, how to of course deal with issues like this. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Safi Ghauri, who's a legal expert. Thank you for being with us today. We'll also be joined by other guests. But Safi, I'm going to start with you. Of course, there's no two ways to look at this. This is, of course, condemnable on all and every level. As people who, of course, we have children also, and society as a whole. There's, of course, this effort that one wants there to be to ensure that society as a whole is a safe place for children. This kind of abuse and the way that these incidents that have happened in the last couple of weeks are particularly harrowing. What is, as far as the law is concerned, do we have enough laws? Is it an implementation problem, broadly speaking? Let's start.
So, Mahrukh, so let's just look at everything holistically, and there's a lot to unpack here. But right off the cuff, there is absolutely no problem with the laws. I mean, it should be fairly obvious. Child sex abuse, especially what we've seen in the last couple of months, is absolutely atrocious. It is unthinkable. It is forbidden by every law of the world. Even if we did not have specialized laws, even general laws would have covered it. So, for instance, the Pakistan Penal Code clearly forbids rape, which is under section 366 and 367, both defining rape and then the consequences of rape. Both offences punishable by death. So even if we were to just look at it not as an offence against children, but again an offence against any other human being, that is sufficient to constitute a death penalty. Pakistan is very clear on that. But because Pakistan was in such a demented place, we had to constantly make other laws, and we have made other laws. I think right now Pakistan has probably the strictest laws in the world for child sex abuse. We have the Xana Alert Act, which makes a database of all child offenders, makes a database of children. FIRs are to be registered in just 2 hours. Trials are to be completed within 2 months. The time for appeals is just 2 months. Everything has been done. When it comes to legislation, it is not a problem of legislation.
So what is where is the problem?
I don't know. So this I genuinely do not understand. We are a Muslim country. This is looked upon terribly by Islam. Yet we have a child sex abuse incident every 2 hours in this country. We are talking about this today on Jumatul Wida. We have incidences where children are getting raped in mosques. We have sitting in itikaf. Nobody is safe, nothing is sacred, nothing is holy. How do you explain this? I don't understand. I genuinely am at a loss of words to explain the kind of dismal situation that we have in Pakistan and the kind of pain that we all feel. Especially, it's also ironic that we are discussing this about an Islamic country on the day of Jumatul Wida, but that's what the reality is. This is what we are faced with. So, if you ask me if the laws are sufficient, yes, they are. Is the implementation sufficient? Probably not. I think that's something that we could have improved upon. We've seen recently that there was an FIR that was filed against a Maulvi, and it was withdrawn under pressure by other Maulvis who got together. This seems like a very vicious country where it's the survival of the strongest. Whoever can exude the most pressure then manages to get away with committing the most heinous of injustices. So I don't know, Mahrukh, really. I'm at a loss of words.
But as far as overall, when we talk about, like you said, implementation is a problem. Implementation, because you think that there are power groups that have certain clout in society? Is it because of that also? One of the reasons is that. Other is of course the general snags within our judicial system also, and people exploit those snags or loopholes so that there is they manage to get away with like other crimes. Is it more in this case?
I don't know, maybe it is a twisted sense of morality. Let's put it another way. So recently there was a Gallup interview that was taken from Pakistanis, and they were asked a variety of what you would call moral questions, and they were asked what their opinions are. So questions like should you be allowed to take over somebody's property? Now the majority of Pakistan did respond that no, it should be illegal, but they were like maybe 15% of Pakistanis who thought yes, this should be allowed. Why would somebody endorse stealing publicly on a survey in an interview? I don't understand. So, and there were a variety of other such questions asked, whether you should be allowed to steal from the government, if you should be allowed to steal electricity, and if you should be allowed to steal water. And once again, very surprisingly, a very high amount of people said yes, you should be allowed to steal. So I think this comes down to maybe a lack of education.
Lack of education, or it's about a misguided sense of right and wrong also? A
misguided sense of right and wrong for sure, because if they think that, let's say, if they think that an alim did it, or if a powerful man was involved in child abuse, then it's okay, because maybe they believe in their heads that power is right and any weakness is wrong. Maybe that's what the moral sense is. The law of the jungle, right? In the jungle, the most powerful is also right, no matter what they do. So I don't know. This is too disturbing, really.
But as far as protecting children is concerned, when we talk about the laws that are there to protect children, what about those laws? You said that there's no dearth of laws, but as far as like safe spaces, so to speak, as far as mosques are concerned, like private places are concerned, even we've seen instances happen in, for example, there's an incident that occurred in the assault that occurred in the washroom. How does the state go about making these spaces safe?
Let's forget about safe spaces. So statistically, the highest number of child abuse is taking place by family members. It is family members. We know this statistic. The vast majority of all of these instances involve either some uncle, somebody within the family who was trusted, who then took advantage of the situation. That was supposed to be a safe space for children. Why did they not offer a safe space? Why did the one person that you would never have expected do this? And then also a very high degree of the largest amount is also then taking place in Pakistan by household help. That's also you bring somebody into your house, you give them food and give them a space to live in. You treat them as maybe you don't treat them as a part of your family. I'm not going to say that, but the reality is that at the end of the day, you give them they're there for a job, and you give them access to your house, to your private space. They violate it. So what do you do about these things?
Do you think the onus, I mean, of course, invariably the onus is on the parents or the person who is supposed to be that protector, as far as children are concerned, and to ensure. But again, this is also a problematic situation where, like you said, it's somebody near and dear, or it's somebody like the help, or so that's a problem. And of course, with children who are minors, it's also about psychology. It's about the fact that of course, for them to talk about it, and this is even true for older people.
Of course. I think that I would concur with. So I think the first problem is also the fact that it's kept so taboo. The taboo around it, the fact that nobody can talk about it, is also the children cannot talk about it. Children are not explained what sexual abuse is, even if they go through it.
It's also about education in that.
It's also absolutely. So I think. And that's interestingly where Islam comes in, and I think the idea of it being a taboo is a Western idea. So historically, we have seen that Islamic education involved sex education at a very young age. Children were informed what it was, of course, because they were expected to grow up and marry quickly, and there was a whole host of other reasons why they were informed about these things much quicker and about how to what's halal, what's haram, and these things. Now we feel like maybe it's appropriate to hide it from them for a very, very long time.
Because of society, because of society, the taboo that
because of course, and this was a very British thing. They were very prude. This is not something that we find even in France, for instance. This is an overlay of the British colonial system, where any talk of sex was frowned down upon, was considered to be barbaric, and not befitting of high society. Like you're a barrister as well, so you know how this entire societal system functions.
Yeah, like the overall the clamping down on whatever is allowed to be talked about, whatever is normal.
Absolutely.
And that still persists in society
and
even today.
So couple that with our otherwise our very strong sense of tying izzat to sexuality has also resulted in this huge problem where nobody wants to talk about it, nobody wants to discuss about it. But at the end of the day, what bothers me is not the fact that people are not talking about it enough. What bothers me is why are they doing it? What's
yes,
the,
of course.
at the end of the day, that's the part that I'm still unable to understand.
When we talk about the society, we talk about our the way that society deals with it, education, awareness, all of those things are important. But the question is, at the end of the day, it is a crime.
It is a crime.
And how the state responds to that crime and to ensure that there's efficacy and there's implementation, that is the responsibility of the state. Isn't that true?
So let's think about it now. As we can do a thought experiment to try and understand how this goes. So of course you are absolutely right that to fight the crime is the responsibility of the state, and the state has over the years given a lot of death penalties on these matters. A lot of people have been executed. A lot of this has happened. New bills are also pending in the parliament calling for chemical castration of men who are sex offenders. So the question, I mean, maybe this works, I don't know. At this stage, I genuinely don't understand, because what I want to talk about here is that whereas all of this is true and correct and maybe we should have all of this, why don't other countries have all of this is what my question is.
Why is it if you do a comparative analysis, are we more vulnerable? Do we have more of a problem statistically, in your opinion?
Yes, I do think that we have more of a problem statistically. That's exactly what I was trying to get at. I think there is some problem that makes Pakistan and India stand out. So if you look at the ratio of these crimes, they seem to be considerably higher in the subcontinent. Look at the stats from China. They report like maybe 60 rapes in the whole year, and all across China, which is 1 billion people.
Because of implementation?
Maybe, I don't know. That's the point. So maybe one could argue that that's the case. But then we don't have this level of these crimes in other, like, so I'll give you an example. Let's take an example and then we'll understand things a little better. India is currently occupying Kashmir. Kashmir is known as the rape capital of the world. The highest number of rapes recorded in the world. Russia is occupying Ukraine. We don't hear rape stories. Why? This is a question, right? This is something that would come into my mind. Like, why are they not? There's a breakdown of the legal system there. Occupied territories, war zones. Why is this not happening there?
But we're hearing about it in Palestine.
But we are hearing, yes, absolutely. So this makes me wonder.
If there is a religious.
Exactly, I don't know. It makes me wonder what the reason is. This is exactly what confuses me. We have constant warfare in many other parts of the world, but rape is not a societal and a social evil that is being used as a tool to wage war. But sometimes it is. So is it because of the value that we attach to sexuality? Because every time you do so, what you do is you harm their respect. Is that what the reason is? Maybe, I don't know. This is one of those things that I am still, I haven't been able to figure out. There are probably other anthropological experts who understand the rationales behind how militaries weaponize rape as a crime, but that would still never explain why we have it socially here in Pakistan.
One of the things that you talked about, you said, one, that there is no dearth of laws. And that there have been instances where this has led to execution, death penalty. Do you think, the deterrence of it is somehow failing, right? We have to concur with that.
Yes, that is correct.
So how do we deal with that, in your opinion, as a lawyer? Do you think it's not documented enough? Do you think that, perhaps if it was more documented, perhaps if more people, it was, well, I'm not saying that a public, execution or a public, I'm not going towards that, but there has to be, perhaps making it the news more public will be a way,
So I'll give you an example of personal experience. I was representing a client in the courts in Fatehjung. There was a very unfortunate incident in which there was a child who was raped, and that child's father was trying to get justice in the courts against, and he was raped by one of the mullahs. So he was up against the mullah in the court and he filed an FIR. And right outside the court, there were close to 100 mullahs who were constantly jeering and chanting and who were constantly making fun of the boy's father and calling him a kafir and trying to intimidate him. Now, this is unthinkable in a civilized society. A normal judge would have gotten all of them arrested for contempt of court, for being an obstacle to justice, because that's what it is. You can't do this in any civilized country. But in Pakistan, they can. And you know why they can? Once again, let's think of it that way. Why can they not then? Do we not also sit and criticize court judgments day in and day out that are rape related? If they're political judgments, we see people come out on the streets and protest against the courts. Nobody talks about them. So in fact, the reality is that there is no respect of the courts, and the courts themselves are to be blamed for that, because the courts have been given a tool. They've been told that, for instance, they can exercise this power of contempt of court. They are able to summon anyone they want, and yet they don't. We have this case of where the judges are blaming the Ayesha for interfering. Why don't they just? They are powerful judges. They should just call and they should arrest the people responsible. But they don't. And the fact that judges themselves are refusing to exercise their powers is leading to a breakdown of the entire judicial system.
But the question is, again, I know that you're saying the pressure groups of it, or of course the groups that have clout, which is true for any country really. I mean, there are groups within pressure groups, but for them to be able to exercise this kind of pressure, our laws have to be that stringent, that or our implementation has to be that stringent, our police framework has to be that stringent that it can deal with that issue, right?
So of course, Manu, there's no doubt about the fact that there is clearly a failing here.
Yes.
But then let's look at it from another perspective then. Why are suddenly laws so stringent when it comes to a blasphemy case? So why is everybody suddenly on action? Why are the courts so efficient? Why is the police so efficient? What happens then? For a very similar manner, these political cases that we see, day-to-day hearings, why is everybody?
You think it has to be overall the efficacy of the system? We have with us Ayesha, Raza, Farooq, who's Chairperson, NCRC. Ayesha, thank you so much for taking the time. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ayesha, we're talking about an issue which is, of course, extremely harrowing. The issue of, child abuse incidents that have increased recently over time, and we've seen a recent increase. To what do you, in your position, you must be looking at the statistics, you must be looking at the overall situation. To what do you attribute this recent increase? Do you think it's about implementation? Do you think, because there don't seem to be a dearth of the laws in the field, isn't that correct?
Thank you. I'd like to, through your program, express my strong reservation, protest over these highly condemnable incidents of child sexual abuse that we've seen in the very, very recent past here. And I think while we have some good laws available, one such law is the Anti-Rape Act 2021, which has very recently broadened the definition of rape to include unnatural offences, marital rape, sodomy, etc., created very strong structures like anti-rape crisis cells, special sexual investigation units at the police level, special prosecutors and special courts have been designated. A sex offender register is going to be made very soon also. But the weakest link seems to be and regulation over here. And I think till we do not hold perpetrators to justice, whether they're well connected, whether they're powerful, it's absolutely critical that conviction rate must go up. It is very, very dismally low at the moment. So that's one side of it. The other is, you spoke about how cases have increased in the recent past, and I look at it from these two different angles here. One, of course, it depicts for us how child sexual abuse has increased in the country. SAHIL's cruel number report of 2023 last year says that 11 children on a daily basis are abused in our country, and many of these are sexual abuse cases here, and almost equally split between girls and boys. The other reason why we could be seeing an increase is that there's better reporting. People are coming out and reporting it. 91% of these child sexual abuse cases were registered with the police also, which I think is encouraging, that people are finally trusting the police to register these cases. However, please bear in mind that this is really, I think, the tip of the iceberg. There must be so many out there who don't have the confidence in the system or otherwise to talk about any sexual abuse that they face, whether it's children, whether it's parents. I think we at a societal level, we have to also work at changing norms, attitudes, and a very primitive socio-cultural traditions here, where children
Ayesha, we talk about, I'm going to interject, we talk about the efficacy. You mentioned conviction. It has to be, the system overall has to be more efficacious for there to be more efficient, for there to be results and those results to be seen. But overall, the deterrence of these laws and these convictions is clearly failing. Do you think perhaps it should be more public when someone, a perpetrator of this heinous crime is actually brought to justice, and that maybe will have some ripple effect as far as society is concerned overall?
Absolutely. I think if I'm allowed to cite this recent case of the Tandiawala case here, where this young boy whose father saw him allegedly being victimized, abused by a religious madrasa owner, filed a complaint. And if you see his initial interview with the local media channel, he says that the reason he's registering an FIR is for his son's sake, and also because of other children who may be threatened in the future if such people are not brought to justice. And yet you see how there's a societal pressure, how you have a panchayat sit and force him to withdraw his complaint. That's the kind of change I'm talking about at the societal level here. And convictions are low because of course, there could be evidence is wanting, prosecution or investigation is wanting, and also because people don't come forth to record their evidence or come up as witnesses over here. And many times that we've spoken to the police here, there's always been an issue of people not coming forth to give evidence in such cases because you have a stronger party in the face of whether it's a political, religious, or other leader. Someone.
Ayesha, let me come back to you. We also have with us Hina Jillani, who is a human rights expert. She's also a renowned lawyer. Ji, Hina, can you hear me? I think there's a problem with audio. Ayesha, I think there was a problem with audio, but also I want to talk more about, we talk about the problems with the judicial system, and we talk about revamping the judicial system. We talk about perhaps reforming it. With regard to this issue in particular, what are some of the reforms you think that should be, in your experience, issues you've seen recurring that should be done as soon as possible, and perhaps, will lead to some
So I think we need to reform. We need to reform very quickly the entire criminal justice system, all the actors there, which is the police, prosecution, and judiciary here. And while we have been at the commission, as the other hat I wear of Chairperson, the Special Committee on Anti-Rape Legislation, we have been conducting training sessions in tandem with other NGOs and civil society organizations of, telling people of whether it's police or judiciary, of the importance of more child-centric, putting the child-centric lens on when they're investigating cases, the critical issue of timely medical legal investigation to make sure you have strong evidence that leads to conviction later on. So I think that is something we need to do at a larger scale, and through programs like you're having right now, create awareness and build this trust among the public and our citizens that they must, without fear, come out, one, to report any child sexual abuse case that they see around them or within their home, two, stand up with people like the complainant, the father of the victim, the child in the Tandiawala case. Instead of forcing him to withdraw his complaint, I wish everyone would have come together in that neighborhood to stand with the father to say that, this complaint has to go forth, this person must be held accountable. That's the kind of pressure we need to create now, whether it's pressure on our judiciary, police, government, that's absolutely critical. And I'm glad that the state and the Chief Minister Punjab did take a step in the right direction and did announce that the state will become a party in this particular case. And despite the complainant withdrawing his complaint here, this will be taken, the perpetrators will be taken to task. Not just that, but the panchayat that was unconstitutionally held to give a decision here, everyone involved there will be held accountable, because it's absolutely unlawful, illegal in our country to have a parallel judicial system like a panchayat.
Right. Thank you so much, Ayesha. Thank you for your very valuable time. I know you're traveling. I'm going to go to Hina Jillani. Ji, Hina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hina, we're talking about, the implementational issues as far as this issue of child abuse in particular is concerned, and other lacunas that are in the law. As far as this particular crime is concerned, of course these are snags or issues or loopholes that we see in other crimes also. As far as this crime is concerned, with, like, for example, where the panchayat steps in, like we saw in the recent case that Ayesha also was just mentioning, there is, for the state to become a crime, shouldn't it be the normal course of things? Because of course, this is a crime against the state.
That's true. And I just want to endorse what Ayesha has just said. And I want to add to what she has said. Look, sexual abuse of children is a very serious crime in the Pakistan Penal Code. And there is no way that this crime can be compounded by any member of the family or the complainant or anyone else. It's a crime against the state, and the state has to take full responsibility for it. And even if the father who lodged the complaint tried to back out of that complaint, the state must take the responsibility, gather evidence, not wait for the father or any complainant to bring forward the evidence, and to prosecute the person concerned. The child who became the victim of this offense would also be a witness, but there are special provisions in the law itself, and generally as a standard of examination of child witnesses, they should follow those standards, so that the child's own psychological trauma is not repeated in court. And then there are those laws that also protect the privacy of the child. So all these processes are already in existence. If the state, the prosecution, and the courts pay attention to what the law says. Today, what I witnessed in defending or in being involved with these kind of trials, I see that neither the court nor the prosecution nor the legal community follow the standards that are involved in the examination of child witnesses, in making sure that nobody is allowed to misuse the process of the court or is allowed to withdraw a complaint where a child is a victim of this kind of heinous crime. So the major burden is now on the state to not abdicate from its own responsibility and give the excuse, oh, the complainant withdrew the complaint, so we can't do anything. The state is the one who should actually pursue the prosecution.
Right, fair enough. Hina, please stay with us. I'm just going to come back to you. We have with us Manizeh Bano, who's Executive Director, SAHIL. Manizeh, there is, as far as statistics are concerned, in your opinion, I think what we have here is that there is an increase. To what do you attribute this recent increase in this kind of crime? Is it because, like Ayesha said, is it about perhaps more cases are now being reported? Perhaps the society is, it's becoming easier, even if a little bit, for people to report this case, the cases like this, or is there something, what is the reason why we are seeing this increase?
Yes, I think that what Ayesha said is already very relevant. More reporting is one of most. All these things are contributing, because more reporting, people becoming more aware, people thinking that justice must be done, people realizing that this is a crime that should not go unaddressed. So all those aspects are there. Just to put it in a bit of a perspective, please see that this is not just Pakistan, this is all over the world. If you see the statistics of children being abused all over the world, it is happening all the time. What is the sort of real issue behind us. Have human beings stopped being human? If we look at the rest of the world and the way it is, I would say that may be very true. And but that still does not mean that we do not address the issue. But first of all, I do think the main thing, as Hina was saying, is that cases must be very well addressed. It's coming on social media, KG, this case, the person has been let off, as was just recently with the madrasa case. And it's very important now that two things should happen. The investigation should be very thorough so that nobody can try and spoil the case. And second, that there must be absolutely no leniency towards the abuser. These two things must happen if we want things to change.
As far as bringing the culprit to justice, it should be at least as it should be as it should come in the media at least as much as this has, if not more, so that it's as public for the people and the public to know that you don't escape this kind of culpability. That's also extremely important. But Hina, there is overall, as far as for us, of course, there's a taboo associated, and you said that it's true for other societies all over the world also. But there is a religious side to this, is there not?
No. In what way do you think that? I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I mean that there is the way that these cases are dealt with. There's a taboo associated with it, and then that's societal, more societal than perhaps religious. But the way that this perhaps the awareness of it, and for the people to understand that for this issue to be made public, it's just another crime, and that it has to be taken as a crime rather than a lack of shame, for it to be shame, a source of shame, or a source of perhaps of course shame for of course the
shame.
victim.
There's a lot of shame, guilt. A lot of these things are a part of it. But yes, but that is when people get confident that we are right if we say that this is to be addressed and to be stopped. Because lots of people are not even sure that it's okay. That it's okay to scream about the crime, and that it doesn't matter. There is no shame for the victim. Unfortunately, now that's very, very cultural and very societal. Nothing to do with religion, actually.
But in terms of the pressure groups that we've seen, in terms of like I think Hina also mentioned, as far as clout is concerned, as far as having these kind of perpetrators being brought to justice, the snags that the system has as far as pressure groups are concerned, or belonging to a certain group is concerned, or belonging to a certain class is concerned, those issues also have to be addressed naturally.
You have to understand that abuse always occurs in a power structure. This is something we must understand. The abuser will always be in some way or the other more powerful than the victim. Now, normally it can be position. So if they are in a stronger position, whether it's politically or economically or in the hierarchy of positions, they will always be able to try and manipulate and get away with what it is. Now, that's where, unfortunately, that's why it is often not going to be reported also. How often will you do that reporting? Look at the case of harassment at the workplace. How many people are willing to report, lose a job, get into a sort of a litigation, have all that thrown at them? I mean, these are not easy changes. They take time. There's no question about that. And we have to just keep at it. We have to keep going and keep on giving people confidence that, look, this is wrong, and there's no shame and there's no guilt, and you must come forward and report, and you must be brave enough. I say you have to be brave to get into the legal sort of situation. So be brave enough, because that is the only way we can at least keep this in some level of control.
Right. Let me come back to you. Hina, do you think we are, Hina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hina, do you think that, you know, we are better today than we were 10 years ago, even 5 years ago? Do you think we've made any headway with regard to, you know, cluing in or the society, the awareness, the fact that, you know, there is perhaps a degree of more safety that the culprit, you know, the victim feels in coming forward? Or you think that, you know, in all realistic sense, we are still where we were? Do you think we've made, or, you know, it's too pessimistic a view? What is your overall take of this?
Well, the only reason for being optimistic is that now it has become a part of the public debate. But unfortunately, it is a debate which starts only when an incident happens. It's not a social problem that people are discussing, where, like Manizeh has said, the power relationships make places where children are present much more vulnerable for those children to become victims, like domestic service, for instance, madrasas. This is something that we have learned from actual experience. And we have seen so many cases which we can now categorize as cases that happen either during domestic service or in an institution which has totally no supervision and a false sense of the high position that the clergy holds in this country, which intimidates people when these kind of incidents happen there and nobody is willing to report them. So the thing is that, like in the women's, on the women violence against women's issue, and let me say again over here, it's not only sexual abuse. Our children are entitled to be protected from violence altogether. So whether that is violence of a physical nature in a school, in a madrasa, at home. So these are some of the things that we should take into consideration. I think that we are lacking in the awareness section. I don't think that people are right now very well aware of their responsibility towards the protection of their own children and generally of the society for protection of children in the country. Like, you know, I think that parents are not even aware. And perhaps in some ways, they need to be more sensitized to the need of protection for their children who are either who are in a more kind of exposed position, like in a domestic service. Why should the parents not be made aware that this is against the law in Pakistan to put a child in domestic service? That the reason why this prohibition has been enforced is because children are subjected to violence, sexual abuse, etc. At the same time, these madrasas need to be looked at. There are far too many cases being reported from madrasas, which mean that the people who are running these madrasas, either themselves or people employed by them, are deviants who should never be near children. So why does the state not become proactive and impose certain standards and conditions for employment in a madrasa or for opening madrasas?
Why? So I think that's a very important question. I'm going to come to Safiullah with this. Safiullah, why do you think, you know, I think that Hina raises a very important question. She's saying, why doesn't the state become more active in ensuring that this kind of violence doesn't come from a particular place or a particular group, which is extremely important?
So it's a very, very good question, and to be honest, the state has tried. So there have been countless proposals for madrasa reforms. Madrasa reforms did not include just this aspect of child abuse, but also the very many other problems that are going happening through.
Corporal punishment
not
also
just
has
corporal
become
punishment. The fact that madrasas are now the breeding ground of radical terrorists. Every terrorist known to Pakistan has come from a madrasa. So, you know, hardly anyone comes from like a standard liberal university of sorts. So the fact that madrasas have been responsible for producing these various ills, there were various proposals put forward to reform those madrasas as well. Unfortunately, none of them have gone through. Once again, as we discussed earlier, maybe due to power clouds, maybe due to our cultural sensitivity, because we would like to believe that madrasas are places which are churning out good people. We, in fact, one of the things that I often notice is that madrasas are some of the most well-funded places in Pakistan. The vast majority of zakat seems to be going into madrasas. So they, as Pakistanis, we are not even willing to cut off their funding. We want to keep funding it, And we, despite knowing what ills it is producing, we don't really want to fund schools. There's no real push for funding education systems. Now, there is one thing though that I want to point out, and something that you very aptly pointed out. I was listening to the conversation you were having, and you very correctly used the word shame. There is an anthropological theory by Ruth Benedict which talks about how cultures can be divided into different types of sort of like weaknesses that they have. So our culture is that of shame, another culture is that of guilt, another culture is that of fear. So the Indo-Pakistan, China, these cultures are shame-oriented cultures, and this is something that the state could in fact use very effectively by shaming the perpetuator rather than by allowing the shame to fall on the victim.
Very true.
So if we were to just flip the board, use the shame against those, ensure that those people are so publicly shamed that those families who produce such oppressors feel this massive pressure to disown those people, only then will the society really start moving in some manner.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Manizeh Bano, thank you for your time. Hina Jillani, thank you for talking to us on such an important topic. Ayesha, Raza, Farooq, thank you for your time. Safi, Ullah, Ghauri, thank you so much for being with us. Of course, a dearth of laws certainly does not exist, but that doesn't mean that they're not implementational problems. That doesn't mean that we as a society don't need to come together to condemn and shame the perpetrator rather than the victim, to make sure that we deal with the taboo of it as far as the society is concerned, that we don't stop talking about it. We don't talk about an isolated incident and the hype comes in and then it dies down. It needs to be a consistent effort which has to be across the board, or everyone in all society as far as media is concerned, the government is concerned, civil society is concerned. A combined effort is needed to redress this very, very reprehensible evil that is running rampant in society. Let's hope that we can do that. Let's hope that we can play our part in trying to deal with this crime, because it's nothing else except a crime. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.